All right, welcome back, guys. Welcome into the live. This is Trev from Trebessence, and today we are going to start the reading of the book Spare, the widely anticipated book from Prince Harry on his life as a royal, his service in the military, his life after marrying his wife Meghan, and how it came to be that he ended up leaving his home in England and leaving royal duties and coming to live in America with his wife and family. So we are going to be reading this book. I know it's long anticipated. We have all been waiting to read. I haven't started yet, Sister Winton. I was waiting for you. I was waiting for you, my love. Yeah, so we are going to be reading this book. Well, I got it on Kindle, so I'm reading it off of this phone. All right, we are going to begin. Welcome into the live. Thank you all so much. It's 409 pages. Definitely, we're not going to be reading it in one go, but every day we will come back and read a bit of it until we are done. Okay, guys, let us begin. The book is called Spare by Prince Harry. We agreed to meet a few hours after the funeral. In the Frogmore Gardens by the old Gothic ruin, I got there first. I looked around, saw no one. I checked my phone. No text, no voicemails. They must be running late, I thought, leaning against the stone wall. I put away my phone and told myself, stay calm. The weather was quintessentially April. Not quite winter, not quite spring. The trees were bare, but the air was soft. The sky was gray, but the tulips were popping. The light was pale, but the indigo lake threading through the gardens glowed. How beautiful is all this, I thought, and also how sad. Once upon a time, this was going to be my forever home. Instead, it had proved to be just another brief stop. When my wife and I fled this place, in fear of our sanity and physical safety, I wasn't sure when I'd ever come back. That was January of 2020. Now, 15 months later, here I was, days after waking to 32 missed calls and then one short, heart-racing talk with Granny. Harry, Grandpa's gone. The wind picked up, turned colder. I hunched my shoulders, rubbed my arms, regretted the thinness of my white shirt. Wait, next page. I wished I'd not changed out of my funeral suit. I wished I had thought to bring a coat. I turned my back to the wind and saw, looming behind me, the Gothic ruin, which in reality was no more Gothic than the Millennium Wheel, some clever architect, some bit of stagecraft. Like so much around here, I thought. I moved from the stone wall to a small wooden bench. Sitting, I checked my phone again, peered up and down the garden path. Where are they? Another gust of wind. Funny, it reminded me of Grandpa. His wintry demeanor, maybe, or his icy sense of humor. I recalled one particular shooting weekend years ago. A mate, just trying to make conversation, asked Grandpa what he thought of my new beard, which had been causing concern in the family and controversy in the press. Should the Queen force Harry to shave? Grandpa looked at my mate, looked at my chin, broke into a devilish grin. That's no beard. Everyone laughed. To beard or not to beard, that was the question. But leave it to Grandpa to demand more beard. Let grow the luxurious bristles of a bloody Viking. Yeah, we are continuing, guys. Welcome, guys. Those of you who are new, thank you so much for coming. We are continuing the reading of Harry's book. No, Winsome, we're not stop. We're talking about that before you came back. Yeah. Okay, Natal says she gonna sleep. She gonna keep the light running. Okay, Natal, thank you, my darling. We will continue. I thought of Grandpa's strong opinions, his many passions, carriage driving, barbecuing, shooting, food, beer, the way he embraced life. He had that in we he had that in common with my mother. Maybe that was why he had been such a fan long before she was Princess Diana, back when she was simply Diana Spencer, kindergarten teacher, secret girlfriend of Prince Charles. My grandfather was her loudest advocate. Some said he actually brokered my parents' marriage. If so, an argument could be made that Grandpa was the prime cause in my world. But for him, I wouldn't be here. Neither would my older brother. Then again, maybe your mother would be here if she hadn't married Pa. I recalled one recent chat, just me and Grandpa, not long after he had turned 97. He was thinking about the end. He was no longer capable of pursuing his passions, he said. And yet, the thing he missed most was work. Without work, he said, everything crumbles. He didn't seem sad, just ready. You have to know when it's time to go, Harry. I glanced now into the distance, towards the mini skyline of crypts and monuments alongside Frogmore, the royal burial ground, final resting place for so many of us, including Queen Victoria, also the notorious Wallis Simpson, also her doubly notorious husband Edward, the former king, and my great great uncle. After Edward gave up his throne for Wallis after they fled Britain, both of them fretted about their ultimate return, both obsessed about being buried right here. The Queen, my grandmother, granted their plea, but she placed them at a distance from everyone else, beneath a stooped plane tree. One last finger wag, perhaps, one final exile, maybe. I wondered how Wallis and Edward felt now about all their fretting. Did any of it matter in the end? I wondered if they wondered at all. Were they floating in some airy realm, still mulling their choices? Or were they nowhere? Or were they nowhere thinking? Nothing? Could there really be nothing after this? Does consciousness, like time, have a stop? Or maybe, I thought, just maybe, they are here right now, next to the fake Gothic ruin, or next to me, eavesdropping on my thoughts. And if so, maybe my mother is too. The thought of her, as always, gave me a jolt of hope and a burst of energy and a stab of sorrow. I missed my mother every day, but that day, on the verge of that nerve-wracking rendezvous at Frogmore, I found myself longing for her, and I couldn't say just why. Like so much about her, it was hard to put into words. Although my mother was a princess, named after a goddess, both those terms always felt weak, inadequate. People routinely compared her to icons and saints, from Nelson Mandela to Mother Teresa to Joan of Arc, but every such comparison, while lofty and loving, also felt wide of the mark. The most recognizable woman on the planet, one of the most beloved, my mother was simply indescribable. That was the plain truth. And yet, how could someone so far beyond everyday language remain so real, so palpably present, so exquisitely vivid in my mind? How was it possible that I could see her, clear as the swan skimming towards me on that indigo lake. How could I have her laughter, loud as the songbirds in the bare trees, still? There was so much I didn't remember because I was so young when she died. But the greater miracle was all that I did. Her devastating smile, her vulnerable eyes, her childlike love of movies and music and clothes and sweets and us. And how she loved my brother and me obsessively. She once confessed to an interviewer, well, mummy, vice versa. Maybe she was omnipresent for the very same reason that she was indescribable, because she was light, pure and radiant light. And how can you really describe light? Even Einstein struggled with that one. Recently, astronomers rearranged their biggest telescopes, aimed them at one tiny crevice in the cosmos, and managed to catch a glimpse of one breathtaking sphere, which they named Earendel, the old English word for morning stars. Billions of miles off and probably long vanished, Earendel is closer to the Big Bang, the moment of creation, than our own Milky Way, and yet it's somehow still visible to mortal eyes because it's just so awesomely bright and dazzling. That was my mother. That was why I could see her, sense her, always, but especially that April afternoon at Frogmore. That, and the fact that I was carrying her flag. I'd come to those gardens because I wanted peace. I wanted it more than anything. I wanted it for my family's sake and for my own, but also for hers. People forget how much my mother strove for peace. She circled the globe many times over, traps, trapped, trapped through minefields, cuddled AIDS patients, consoled war orphans, always working to bring peace to someone somewhere. And I knew how desperately she would have wanted it. No, did want it. Peace between her boys and between us two and Pa and among the whole family. For months, the Windsors had been at war. There had been strife in our ranks, off and on, going back centuries. But this was different. This was a full-scale public rupture, and it threatened to become irreparable. So, though I'd flown home specifically and solely for Grandpa's funeral, while there, I'd asked for this secret meeting with my older brother, Willie, and my father to talk about the state of things, to find a way out. But now I looked once more at my phone and once more up and down the garden path, and I thought, maybe they've changed their minds. Maybe they're not going to come. For half a second, I considered giving up, going for a walk through the gardens by myself, or heading back to the house where all my cousins were drinking and sharing stories of Grandpa. Then, at last, I saw them, shoulder to shoulder, striding towards me. They looked grim, almost menacing. More, they looked tightly aligned. My stomach dropped. Normally, they'd be squabbling about one thing or another, but now they appeared to be in lockstep, in league. The thought occurred, hang on, are we meeting for a walk or a duel? I rose from the wooden bench, made a tentative step towards them, gave a weak smile. They didn't smile back. Now my heart really started thrashing around in my chest. Deep breaths, I told myself. Apart from fear, I was feeling a kind of hyper-awareness and a hugely intense vulnerability, which I'd experienced all at other key moments in my life. Walking behind my mother's coffin, going into battle for the first time, giving a speech in the middle of a panic attack. There was that same sense of embarking on a quest and not knowing if I was up to it. while also fully knowing that there was no turning back, that fate was in the saddle. Okay, Mummy, I thought, picking up the pace. Here goes. Wish me luck. We met in the middle of the path. Willie, Pa, hello. Harold, painfully tepid. We wheeled, formed a line, set off along the gravel path, over the little ivy-covered stone bridge. The way we simply fell into this synchronous alignment, the way we wordlessly assumed the same measured paces and bowed heads, plus the nearness of those graves, how could anyone not be reminded of Mommy's funeral? I told myself not to think about that, to think instead about the pleasing crunch of our footsteps and the way our words flew away like wisps of smoke on the wind. Being British, being Windsors, we began chatting casually about the weather. We compared notes about Grandpa's funerals. He had planned it all himself, down to the tiniest detail. We reminded each other with rueful smiles. Small talk, the smallest. We touched on all secondary subjects, and I kept waiting for us to get to the primary one, wondering why it was taking so long, and also how on earth my father and brother could appear so calm. I looked around. We had covered a fair bit of terrain, and were now smack in the middle of the royal burial ground, more up to our ankles in bodies than Prince Hamlet. Come to think of it, didn't I myself once ask to be buried here? Hours before I had gone off to war, my private secretary said I needed to choose the spot where my remains would be interred, should the worst happen. Your Royal Highness, war being an uncertain thing, there were several options. St. George's Chapel, the Royal Vault at Windsor, where Grandpa was being settled at that moment. No, I'd chosen this one because the gardens were lovely and because it seemed peaceful. Our feet almost on top of Wally Simpson's face, Pa launched into a micro lecture about this personage over here, that royal cousin over there, all the once eminent dukes and duchesses, lords and ladies currently residing beneath the lawn. A lifelong student of history, he had loads of information to share, and part of me thought we might be there for hours, and that there might be a test at the end. Mercifully, he stopped, and we carried on along the grass around the edge of the lake, arriving at a beautiful little patch of daffodils. It was there, at last, that we got down to business. I tried to explain my side of things. I wasn't at my best. For starters, I was still nervous, fighting to keep my emotions in check, while also striving to be succinct and precise. More, I'd vowed not to let this encounter devolve into another argument. But I quickly discovered that it wasn't up to me. Pa and Willie had their parts to play, and they had come ready for a fight. Every time I ventured a new explanation, started a new line of thought, one or both of them would cut me off. Willie, in particular, didn't want to hear anything. After he had shut me down several times, he and I began snipping, saying some of the same things we had said for months, years. It got so heated that Pa raised his hands. Enough! He stood between us, looking up at our flushed faces. Please, boys, don't make any final years a misery. Don't make my final years a misery. His voice sounded raspy, fragile even. As if they should have put as right there, but I'm going to read it as though. It sounded as if, I'm being honest, a little old. I thought about Grandpa. All at once, something shifted inside of me. I looked at Willie, really looked at him, maybe for the first time since we were boys. I looked it all in. His familiar scroll, which had always been his default in dealings with me, his alarming baldness, more advanced than my own, his famous resemblance to Mommy, which was fading with time, with age. In some ways, he was my mirror. In some ways, he was my opposite, my beloved brother, my arch nemesis. How had that happened? Welcome into the live, my friends. We are reading Harry's book. Yes, welcome, guys. How you all doing? You want me to make a thumbnail for your channel? Jordan, I ain't giving you any proposals, honey. I ain't giving you any proposals, my love. If you want to exercise your talent, it's up to you. So you are free to go ahead. You know, many people talk about they want to make a thing for my channel. I ain't stressed about it. If you want to do it, it's on you. The amazing MNG. Thank you so much, MNG. Thank you so much, my sister. I'm going to continue to read at least the first chapter for tonight. There's 3 minutes left in this chapter, so we're going to continue. I felt massively tired. I wanted to go home, and I realized what a complicated concept home had become. Or maybe always was. I gestured at the gardens, the city beyond, the nation, and said, Willie, this was supposed to be our home. We were going to live here the rest of our lives. You left, Harold. Yeah, and you know why. I don't. You don't. I honestly don't. I leaned back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was one thing to disagree about who was at fault or how things might have been different. But for him to claim total ignorance of the reasons I'd fled the land of my birth, the land for which I'd fought and been ready to die, my mother's country, that fraught phrase, to claim no knowledge of why my wife and I took the drastic step and picking up our child and just running like hell, leaving behind everything, house, friends, furniture. Really? I looked up at the trees. You don't know. Harold, I honestly don't. I turned to Pa. He was gazing at me with an expression that said, neither do I. Wow, I thought. Maybe they really don't. Staggering, but maybe it was true. And if they didn't know why I'd left, maybe they just didn't know me at all. And maybe they never really did. And to be fair, maybe I didn't either. The thought made me feel colder and terribly alone, but it also fired me up. I thought, I have to tell them. How can I tell them? I can't. It will take too long. Besides, they are clearly not in the right frames of mind to listen. Not now, anyway. Not today. And so, Pa, Willie, world, here you go. Part 1. Out of the Night That Covers Me. And there's a nice, cute little picture of him and his mom right there. Okay, that looks like it wasn't long before she died because he looks like around the same age. So now we are on to chapter 1. There were always stories. People would whisper now and then about folks who hadn't fared well at Balmoral. The long-ago queen, for instance, mad with grief, she had locked herself inside Balmoral Castle and vowed never to come out, and the very proper former prime minister, he had called the place surreal and utterly freaky. Still, I don't think I heard those stories until much later. Or maybe I heard them and they didn't register. To me, Balmoral was always simply paradise, a cross between Disney World and some sacred Druid grove. I was always too busy fishing, shooting, running up and down the hill to notice anything off about the feng joie of the old castle. What I'm trying to say is I was happy there. In fact, it's possible that I was never happier than that one golden summer day at Balmoral on August 30 of 1997. We had been at the castle for 1 week. The plan was to stay for another. Same as the previous year, same as the year before that. Balmoral was its own micro season, a 2 week interlude in the Scottish Highlands to mark the turn from high summer to early autumn. Granny was there too. Naturally, she spent most of every summer at Balmoral, and Grandpa and Willie and Pa, the whole family, with the exception of Mommy, because Mommy was no longer part of the family. She had either bolted or been thrown out, depending on whom you asked, though I never asked anyone. Either way, she was having her own holiday elsewhere. Greece, someone said. No, Sardinia, someone said. No, no, someone chimed in. Your mother's in Paris. Maybe it was Mommy herself who said that when she phoned earlier that day for a chat. Alas, the memory lies, with a million others, on the other side of the high mental wall. Such a horrid, tantalizing feeling to know they are over there, just on the other side, mere inches away, but the wall is always too high, too thick, unscalable. Not unlike the turrets of Balmoral, wherever Mommy was, I understood that she was with her new friend. That was the word everyone used. Not boyfriend, not lover, friend. Nice enough bloke, I thought. Willie and I had just met. Actually, we had been with Mommy weeks earlier when she first met him in St. Tropez. We were having a grand time, just the three of us, staying at some old gent's villa. There was much laughter, horseplay, the norm whenever Mommy and Willie and I were together. Though even more so on that holiday, everything about that trip to St. Tropez was heaven. The weather was sublime. The food was tasty. Mommy was smiling. Best of all, there were jet skis. Whose were they? Don't know. But I vividly remember Willie and me riding them out to the deepest part of the channel, circling while waiting for the big ferries to come. We used their massive waves as ramps to get airborne. I'm not sure how we weren't killed. Was it after we got back from that jet ski misadventure that Mommy's friend first appeared? No, more likely it was just before. Hello there, you must be Harry. Raven hair, leathery tan, bone white smile. How are you today? My name is blah blah. He chatted us up, chatted Mommy up. Specifically Mommy, pointedly Mommy, his eyes plumping into red hearts. He was cheeky, no doubt, but again, nice enough. He gave Mommy a present, a diamond bracelet. She seemed to like it. She wore it a lot. Then he faded from my consciousness. As long as Mommy is happy, I told Willie. He said he felt the same. Jordan, while I read, you will get it. Next, we are moving right along. A shock to the system Going from sun-drenched St. Tropez to cloud-shaded Balmoral, I vaguely remember that shock, though I can't remember much else about our first week at the castle. Still, I can almost guarantee it was spent mostly outdoors. My family lived to be outdoors, especially Granny, who got cross if she didn't breathe at least an hour of fresh air each day. What we did outdoors, however, what we said, wore, ate, I can't conjure. There is some there's some reporting that we journeyed by the royal yacht from the Isle of Wight to the castle. The the yacht's final voyage sounds lovely. What I do retain in crisp detail is the physical setting, the dense woods, the deer-nibbled hills, the river Dee snaking down through the highlands, Lochnagar soaring overhead, eternally snow-spattered, landscape, geography, architecture. That's how my memory rolls. Dates? Sorry, I'll need to look them up. Dialogue? I'll try my best, but make no verbatim claims, especially when it comes to the 90s. But ask me about any space I've occupied: castle, cockpit, classroom, stateroom, bedroom, palace, garden, pub, and I'll recreate it down to the carpet tacks. Why should my memory organize experience like this? Is it genetics, trauma, some Frankenstein-esque combination of the two? Is it my inner soldier assessing every space as potential battlefield? Is it my inner homebody nature rebelling against a forced nomadic existence? Is it some base apprehension that the world is essentially a maze and you should never be caught in a maze without a map? Whatever the case, my memory is my memory. It does what it does, gathers and curates as it sees fit. And there's just as much truth in what I remember and how I remember it as there is in so-called objective facts. Things like chronology and cause and effect and often just fables we tell ourselves about the past. The past is never dead. It's not even past. When I discovered that quotation not long ago on brainyquote.com, I was thunderstruck. I thought, who the fuck is Faulkner? And how is he related to us Windsors? And so, Balmoral, closing my eyes, I can see the main entrance, the paneled front windows, the wide portico, and the three gray-black speckled granite steps leading up to the massive front door of the whiskey-colored oak, often popped open by a heavy curling stone and often manned by one red-coated footman, and inside the spacious hall and its white stone floor with grey star-shaped tiles, and the huge fireplace with its beautiful mantel of ornately carved dark wood, and to one side a kind of utility room, and to the left, by the tall windows, hooks for fishing rods and walking sticks and rubber waders and heavy waterproofs, so many waterproofs because summers could be wet and cold all over Scotland, but it was biting in this Siberian nook. And then the light brown wooden door leading to the corridor with the crimson carpet and the walls papered in cream, a pattern of gold flock raised like braille, and then the many rooms along the corridor, each with a specific purpose, like sitting or reading, TV or tea, and one special room for the pages, many of whom I loved like dotty uncles, and finally the castle's main chamber, built in the 19th century, nearly on top of the site of another castle dating to the 14th century, within a few generations of another Prince Harry, who got himself exiled, then came back, and annihilated everything and everyone in sight. My distant kin, my kindred spirit, some would claim, if nothing else, my namesake, born September 15th, 1984, I was christened Harry Charles Albert David of Wales. That's his name, guys. Henry Charles Albert David of Wales. But from day one, everyone called me Harry. In the heart of this main chamber was the grand staircase, sweeping, dramatic, seldomly used. Whenever Granny headed up to her bedroom on the second floor, Corgis at her heels, she preferred the lift. The Corgis preferred it too. Near Granny's lift, through a pair of crimson saloon doors and along a green tartan floor, was a smallish staircase with a heavy iron banister. It led up to the second floor, where stood a statue of Queen Victoria. I always bowed to her as I passed. Your Majesty. Willie did too. We had been told to, but I'd have done it anyway. I found the grandmama of Europe hugely compelling, and not just because Granny loved her, nor because Pa once wanted to name me after her husband. Mommy blocked him. Victoria knew great love, soaring happiness, but her life was essentially tragic. Her father, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, and Strathern, was said to be a sadist, sexually aroused by the sight of soldiers being horsewhipped. And her dear husband, Albert, died before her eyes, also during her long, lonely reign. She was shot at 8 times on 8 separate occasions by 7 different subjects. Not one bullet hit the mark. Nothing could bring Victoria down. Beyond Victoria's statue, things got tricky. Doors became identical, rooms interlocked, easy to get lost. Open the wrong door and you might burst in on Papa while his valet was helping him dress. Worse, you might blunder in as he was doing his headstands. Prescribed by his physiotherapist, these exercises were the only effective remedy for the constant pain in Pa's neck and back. Old pole injuries, mostly. He performed them daily, in just a pair of boxers, propped against a door or hanging from a bar like a skilled acrobat. If you set one little finger on the knob, you'd hear him begging from the other side, "No, no! Don't open! Please, God, don't open!" Balmoral had 50 bedrooms, one of which had been divided for me and Willie. Adults called it the nursery. Willie had the larger half. With the larger half, makes me chuckle. With a double bed, a good-sized basin, a cupboard with mirrored doors, a beautiful window looking down on the courtyard, the fountain, the bronze statue of a roe deer buck. My half of the room was far smaller, less luxurious. I never asked why. I didn't care, but I also didn't need to ask. 2 years older than me, Willie was the heir. Whereas I was the spare. Okay, so now I understand why he called the book Spare. This wasn't merely how the press referred to us, though it was definitely that. This was shorthand after used by Pa and Mommy and Grandpa, and even Granny, the heir and the spare. There was no judgment about it, but also no ambiguity. I was the shadow, the support, the plan B. I was brought into the world in case something happened to Willie. I was summoned to provide backup, distraction, diversion, and, if necessary, a spare part. Mopat, where you come from? Me just reach home from Negril. Oh wow. Wonderful, wonderful. How was the drive? Come know enough things are going on Jamaica, but Trev, you read nice, man. But yeah, them must read nice. Oh my God, them must read nice. Me read nice, me want nice, me talk nice. What are you? You're tired? Hush, drink yourself like a tea. Drink yourself like a tea and rest yourself. Yeah, if you're tired, lay down and rest. That's what you do when you're tired. Rest. You cannot go so like you're a robot. You're not a robot. You gotta lay down and rest. And then come back tomorrow rejuvenated and be ready to move on, to conquer something else tomorrow. Maybe another trip to Negril. From a little cottage in Negril. Why I say, Trev, me sorry someone remarry because of this. Me can't bother with you, you know. Me can't bother with you. I don't want to marry no one, me love. I don't want to marry no one. uh-uh. No, me love. Me not taking on that for myself. I don't want no stress. Like, see, you see me come for live all broke down or something. Hey, to the no. No, no, no. But anyway, I'll continue reading this Harry book here. You can't sleep. Marge not keep. No, so Marge not keep over here, so. Only thing I keep over here, so I'm a book them when me I write and read. Write and read and come on live, come chat to the know. And when me ready, me go to school, go register for next semester. Do one more semester and come off and go do one next something else. Child, please. Me just live my life until the day comes. Don't want nobody stress me out. Me don't want to stress me out. But we are going to continue, guys. Yeah, we are continuing the reading of Spear. For those of you who are just coming, we're reading Spear by Prince Harry. Christine still there. Christine says she enjoying the reading. There you go, my love. I was summoned to provide backup, distraction, diversion, and, if necessary, a spare part. Kidney, perhaps, blood transfusion, speck of bone marrow. This was all made explicitly clear to me from the start of life's journey and regularly reinforced thereafter. Wanna hear that, guys? So Harry is supposed to be the spare parts for William. So if William need a kidney, Harry gonna be the first. I never them are the same blood type. Harry gonna have to be the first one to give William bone marrow, kidney, whatever it is. He's supposed to be the sacrificial lamb. So William can live longer. Because William is the heir. All right. I was 20 the first time I heard the story of what Pa allegedly said to Mommy the day of my birth. Wonderful. Now you have given me an ear and a spear. My work is done. A joke. Presumably, on the other hand, minutes after delivering this bit of high comedy, Pa was said to have gone off to meet with his girlfriend. So many a true word spoken in jest. My work here is done. You have given me a ear and a spear. Then he went off to be with his girlfriend. I took no offense. I felt nothing about it, any of it. Succession was like the weather, or the propositions of the planets, or the turn of the seasons. Who had the time to worry about things so unchangeable? Who could bother with being bothered by a fate etched in stone? Being a Windsor meant working out which truths were timeless and then banishing them from your mind. It meant absorbing the basic parameters of one's identity, knowing by instinct who you were, which was forever a byproduct of who you weren't. I wasn't Granny. I wasn't Pa. I wasn't Willie. I was third in line behind them. Every boy and girl, at least once, imagined themselves as a princess or a prince. Therefore, spare or no spare, it wasn't half bad to actually be one. More, standing resolutely behind the people you loved, wasn't that the definition of honor, of love, like bowing to Victoria as you passed? I said I was going to read chapter 2, but now we're on to chapter 3. We're continuing. Next to my bedroom was a sort of round sitting room, round table, wall mirror, writing desk, fireplace with cushioned heath. Remember, we are gonna start over chapter 3. Next to my bedroom was a sort of round sitting room, round table, wall mirrored, writing desk, fireplace with crushing hearth surrounded. In the far corner stood a great big wooden door that led to a bathroom. The two marble basins looked like prototypes for the first basins ever manufactured. Everything at Balmoral was either old or made to look so. The castle was a playground, a hunting lodge, but also a stage. The bedroom was dominated by a claw-footed tub, and even the water spurting from its tap seemed old. Not in a bad way, old like the lake where Merlin helped Arthur find his magic sword, brownish, suggestive of weak tea. The water often alarmed weekend guests. Sorry, but there seems to be something wrong with the water in my loo. Pa would always smile and assure them that nothing was wrong with the water. On the contrary, it was filtered and sweetened with the Scottish peat. That water came straight off the hill, and what you're about to experience is one of life's finest pleasures of Highland bath. Depending on your preference, your Highland bath could be Arctic cold or kettle hot. Taps throughout the castle were fine-tuned. For me, few pleasures compared with a scalding soak, but especially while gazing out of the castle's slit windows, where all on the people. All right, let's continue. Where was I? For me, few pleasures compared with a scalding soak, but especially while gazing out of the castle's slit windows, where archers, I imagined, once stood guard. I'd look up at the starry sky or down at the walled gardens, picture myself floating over the great lawn, smooth and green as a snooker table. Thanks to the battalion of gardeners, the lawn was so perfect, every blade of grass so precisely mowed. Willie and I felt guilty about walking across it, let alone riding our bikes. But we did it anyway, all the time. Once we chased our cousins across the lawn. We were on squads. The cousins was on go-karts. It was all fun and games until she crashed head-on into a green lamppost. Crazy fluke, the only lamppost within 1,000 miles. We shrieked with laughter, thought the lamppost, which had recently been a tree in one of the nearby forests, snapped clearly in two and fell on top of her. She was lucky not to be seriously hurt. On August 30th of 1997, I didn't spend a lot of time looking at the lawn. Both Willie and I hurried through our evening bath, jumped into our pajamas, settled eagerly in front of the TV. Footmen arrived, carrying trays covered with plates, each topped with a silver dome. The footmen set the trays upon wooden stands, then joked with us, as they always did, before wishing us bon appetit. Footmen, bone china, it sounds posh, and I suppose it was. But under those fancy domes was just kiddie stuff, fish fingers, cottage pies, roast chicken, green peas. Mabel, our nanny, wouldn't once, who had once been Pa's nanny, joined us. As we all stuffed our faces, we heard Pa padding past in his slippers. Coming from his bath, he was carrying his wireless, which is what he called his portable CD player, on which he liked to listen to his storybooks while soaking. Pa was like clockwork. So when we heard him in the hall, we knew it was close to 8. Half an hour later, we picked up the first sounds of the adults beginning their evening migration downstairs, then the first bleating notes of the accompanying bagpipes. For the next 2 hours, the adults would be held captive in the dinner dungeon, forced to sit around that long table, forced to squint at each other in the dim gloom of the candelabra designed by Prince Albert, forced to remain ramrod straight before china plates and crystal goblets placed with mathematical precision by staff who used tape measures, forced to peck at quail's eggs and turbot, forced to make idle chit-chat while stuffed into their fanciest kit, black ties, half-black shoes, trews, maybe even kilts. I thought, what hell, being an adult. Pa stopped by on his way to dinner. He was running late, but he made a show of lifting a silver dome. Yum! Wish I was having that. And taking a long sniff. He was always sniffing things. Food, roses, our hair. He must have been a bloodhound in another life. Maybe he took all those long sniffs because it was hard to smell anything over his personal scent. Phew, savage! He had slathered the stuff on his cheeks, his neck, his shirt. Flowery with a hint of something harsh, like pepper or gunpowder. It was made in Paris. Said so on the bottle, which made me think of Mummy. Yes, Harry, Mummy's in Paris. Their divorce had become final exactly 1 year before, almost to the day. Be good boys. We will, Pa. Don't stay up too late. He left. His scent remained. Willie and I finished dinner, watched some more movie, then got up to our typical pre-bedtime hijinks. We perched on the top step of a side staircase and eavesdropped on the adults, hoping to hear a naughty word or story. We ran up and down the long corridors under the watchful eyes of dozens of dead stag heads. At some point, we bumped into Granny's Piper, rumpled, pear-shaped, with wild eyebrows and a tweed kilt. He went wherever Granny went, because she loved the sound of pipes, as had Victoria, though Albert supposedly called them a beastly instrument. While summering at Balmoral, Granny asked that the piper play her awake and play her to dinner. His instrument looked like a drunken octopus. I'm just thinking about this. I'm just trying to picture this in my mind. So she has a piper going around with her. The piper wakes her in the morning. The piper pipes for her at dinner. Good Lord. Granny asked that the piper play her awake and play her to dinner. His instrument looked like a drunken octopus, except that its floppy arms were etched silver and dark mahogany. We had seen the thing before, many times, But that night he offered to let us hold it. Try it. Really? Come on. We couldn't get anything out of the pipes but a few piddly squeaks. We just didn't have the puff. The piper, however, had a chest the size of a whiskey barrel. He made it moan and scream. Hey, Sean, how are you doing? Good to see you, family. Good to see you. We thanked him for the lesson and bade him good night, then took ourselves back to the nursery, where Mabel monitored the brushing of teeth and the washing of faces, then to bed. My bed was tall. I had to jump to get in, after which I rolled down into its sunken center. It felt like climbing into a bookcase, then tumbling into a slit trench. The bedding was clean, crisp, various shades of white, alabaster sheets, cream blankets, eggshell quilts, much of it stamped with E.R. Elizabeth Regina. Everything was pulled tight as a snare drum, so expertly smooth that you could easily spot the centuries' worth of patched holes and tears. I pulled the sheets and covers up to my chin because I didn't like the dark. No, not true. I loathed the dark. Mommy did too. She told me so. I'd inherited this from her, I thought, along with her nose, her blue eyes, her love of people, her hatred of smugness and fakery and all things posh. I can see myself under those covers, staring into the dark, listening to click, the clicky insects and hooty owls. Did I imagine shapes sliding along the walls? Did I stare at the bear of light along the floor, which was always there, because I always insisted on the door being left open a crack? How much time elapsed before I dropped off? In other words, how much of my childhood remained? And how much did I cherish it, savor it, before groggily becoming aware of Pa? He was standing at the edge of the bed, looking down. His white dressing gown made him seem like a ghost in a play. Yes, darling boy. He gave me half a smile, averted his gaze. The room wasn't dark anymore, wasn't light either. Strange in beginning shade, strange in between shade, almost brownish, almost like the water in the ancient tub. He looked at me in a funny way, a way he had never looked at me before, with fair. What is it, Pa? He sat down on the edge of the bed. He put his hand on my knee. Darling boy, Mommy's been in a crash, a car crash. I remember thinking, crash? Okay, but she's all right. Yes? I vividly remember that thought flashing through my mind, and I remember waiting patiently for Pa to confirm that indeed Mommy was all right, and I remember him not doing that. There was then a shift internally. I began silently pleading with Pa, or God, or both. No, no, no. Pa looked down into the folds of the old quilts and blankets and sheets. There were complications. Mommy was quite badly injured and taken to the hospital, darling boy. He always called me darling boy, but he was saying it quite a lot now. His voice was soft. He was in shock, it seemed. Oh, hospital? Yes, with a head injury. Did he mention paparazzi? Did he say she had been chased? I don't think so. I can't swear to it, but probably not. The paps were such a problem for Mommy, for everyone. It didn't need to be said. I thought again. Injured? But she's okay. She's been taken to the hospital. They'll fix her head, and we'll go and see her today, tonight, at the latest. They tried, darling boy. I'm afraid she didn't make it. These phrases remain in my mind like darts in a board. He did say it that way. I know that much for sure. She didn't make it. And then everything seemed to come to a stop. That's not right. Not seemed. Nothing at all seemed. Everything distinctly, certainly, irrevocably came to a stop. None of what I said to him then remains in my memory. It's possible that I didn't say anything. What I do remember with startling clarity is that I didn't cry, not one tear. Pa didn't hug me. He wasn't great at showing emotions under normal circumstances. How could he be expected to show them in such a crisis? But his hand did fall once more on my knee, and he said, "It's going to be okay." That was quite a lot for him. Fatherly, hopeful, kind, and so very untrue. He stood and left. I don't recall how I knew that he had already been in the other room, that he had already told Willie, but I knew. I lay there or sat there. I didn't get up. I didn't bathe, didn't pee, didn't get dressed, didn't call out to Willie or Mabel. After decades of working to reconstruct that morning, have come to one inescapable conclusion. I must have remained in that room, saying nothing, seeing no one, until around 9 a.m. sharp, when the pipers began to play outside. I wish I could remember what he played, but maybe it doesn't matter. With bagpipes, it's not the tune, it's the tone. Thousands of years old, bagpipes are built to amplify what's already in the heart. If you are feeling silly, bagpipes make you sillier. If you are angry, bagpipes bring your blood to a higher boil. And if you are in grief, even if you are 12 years old and don't know you are in grief, maybe, especially if you don't know, bagpipes can drive you mad. Alrighty, righty, guys. We are done with chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Spare, the book written by Prince Harry. We are going to continue to read this book until it is done. But for tonight, we have read enough. For tonight, yes. So if you want to hear the rest of it, you will have to continue to follow me. If you have not yet hit the like button, hit the like button. What are you waiting for? And you will hear the rest of this book. You do not have to purchase this book. I have purchased it for us. So I'm going to be reading it for us. Yes. So join us again tomorrow. We are going to read another chapter or two, as many as we can. Tomorrow. Wait, where's my pen? Where did I put my pen? Hold on, people. I gotta find my pen and my book right here. Tomorrow, let me just write this here. My book goes with me wherever I go. Tomorrow is what day of the week? Friday, right? And it's February 3rd. And so, let me see. Where's Winsome? Winsome, whatever time is good for you, let me know. Is tomorrow morning great for you guys? Because even if you are not here when I read it, you can always come back and listen. So tomorrow, I'm working tomorrow night, so it's definitely not going to be at this time. So it's going to be around tomorrow, maybe mid-morning, in the morning sometime. I will continue the reading of this book, Spare, by Prince Harry. And we're going to be doing chapter 4. Great job, Trish. See you tomorrow. Have yourself a great night, sugar. Have yourself a fantastic night. Tomorrow we will come back here and we will continue the reading of this book. We will continue from chapter 4. All right, guys, I hope you all enjoyed the reading as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. I know y'all gonna tell me, oh, Trev, you can't go yet. There are 8 people on the live, 8 million people on the live. Well, watch me. Oh my God, guys, whatever you all have to do, go ahead and do it, and go ahead and have yourselves a fabulous and fantastic night, guys. This is going to be it from me for tonight. Until we meet again tomorrow, this is your girl Trev from Traverse, where your journey matters. We will talk tomorrow, guys. Have yourselves a great night. See y'all. Ta ta. Bye bye.